Welcome everyone to another Mast Cell 360 weekly show. I am Jamie Fries-Miller, one of Mast Cell 360's health coaches, and today I'm going to be joined by one of our lead practitioners, Kimberly Quirk. We're going to discuss what comes after you've tried a low histamine diet, and I am sorry, I have two puppies that are very playful right now, so you may hear that in the background. Before we jump in, I did want to say I hope everyone had a nice and relaxing weekend. We had a lot of rain where I was yesterday. I'm in Maryland, and now they're talking about anywhere from like 3 to 20 inches of snow on Thursday. So I'd love to hear in the chat like what your weather's like, where are you, and how your weekend was. All right. So before we get going, some show disclaimers. This presentation is for informational and educational purposes. It's not meant to treat, diagnose, cure, or prevent illness. So be sure to discuss any recommendations with your healthcare provider. And an affiliate reminder, some of the links that we share during the presentation or you find on our website may be affiliate links, which means Mast Cell 360 may take a very small commission if you purchase through us. We only recommend products that we love and use personally or use in the Mast Cell 360 clinic. Okay, so let me bring Kimberly up here, and I will remind you guys, if we have time, we will do a live Q&A. Just please keep to the topic to what we are discussing. So stabilization, low histamine diet, and what comes after that. And please only ask your question once. That helps us sort through the questions so that we can get more answered. So if we have time, we'll certainly bring that up, bring up some questions at the end. All right. So Kimberly, welcome. Let's get started with talking about, low histamine diet. I'd love to everyone to share in the comments. Thank you. I see some people coming in. Hello from Massachusetts, Central New York. Oh yes, expecting 1 to 3 more feet of snow. Yeah, crazy what this weather is doing right now at the end of February. For those who are just joining or on the replay, share in the comments. Have you tried a low histamine diet? And did the low histamine diet help you with your symptoms?
All right. So yeah, talking about the low histamine diet. I know for me on my journey, because I'm a practitioner, but I also have had mast cell. So I have had to do low histamine for quite a while. I do like to share that I don't have to do low histamine anymore. Maybe cherry pick, some of the highest histamine things that I just don't eat because they don't make me feel great, but you can change, and that can change over time. So this doesn't have to be a forever thing, but you want to get at all the layers. And one layer is that low histamine diet and working on that gut piece, and kind of quieting down those mast cells and the response. So what is a low histamine diet? It's basically a tool just because you're trying to lower your histamine load, and and to get at kind of calming down your system, right? So calming down those mast cells. Why do you have too much histamine? Usually the gut, if we're mold exposed, is upregulated for histamine and things like that. So that's what's going on. What it is not, it's not an overly restrictive or unnecessary limited diet. So if you ever look at our low histamine diet list, if you're just going low histamine, there's actually pages of foods, which is wonderful. And there is a lot of abundance and a lot of variety. It's like learning some of the specific things. And I know it can be frustrating when we're first learning it, because it's not like you can go to a restaurant and be like, I'm low histamine, and they'll know what you're talking about. Yeah. So it's a learning process, right? And I'll tell you, when I first learned about low histamine, I was like, I'm eating healthy. I'm eating so healthy. And I look, I'm having a spinach smoothie with pineapple in it and
almond milk.
Eating a lot of bone broth and ferments, tons of ferments. And I'm like, oh, this is so healthy, and balsamic vinegar everywhere. And I tell people that I wanted to flip the table when I found that out, because I thought I had already made a lot of diet changes and was sort of frustrated that it was such a learning curve, right? So I understand that another diet, but for mast cell activation, it's one thing that you do want to do to try to, calm down things and see if it makes a difference for you. I will also tell you that in the beginning, at least for my journey, I could not tell because I had other things that were revving up histamine for me. I was living in mold, and I was stressed out. So my histamine response was huge. And until I took away those layers, could I tell the diet piece? I'm like, okay, now I can see the tie to diet. And sometimes you can't if you have a lot of layers going on.
Yeah, I could
So
tell.
this is a big piece of all of it. Yeah.
I could tell the diet piece immediately helped me because I was at a point where my histamine bucket was so filled I couldn't eat without my nose running. And it didn't matter if it was a high histamine food or just, it literally didn't matter what I was eating. So I was like having runny noses all the time. And then my practitioner at the time was like, oh, it sounds like histamine, so go on a low histamine diet. And so of course that's what led me to Mast Cell 360, one of the pieces. And I realized after doing like strict low histamine, and I say strict in the sense of like, I went like full in. I was like, okay, I'm going to freeze leftovers. I'm not going to eat I'm going to freeze food. I'm going to not eat leftovers. And I realized I was having low grade headaches every single day. So when I did the low histamine diet, it helped with some of the like sinus like symptoms, but also realized how many other symptoms I was actually dealing with that I didn't realize were connected to histamine. So so I had the immediate effect of having the benefit of like realizing how important it was to just ignore that.
Yeah, and everybody's different that way for sure. And when that layer was taken off of me, I could tell. It is more rewarding when you can tell. It kind of keeps you honest and like, okay, for now, this is not what I can eat. It doesn't make me feel great, and I want to kind of quiet things down so I can move forward with changing this. So yeah, it's not a long-term solution. The goal is to add as many variety and healthy foods back, and I definitely have done that. Jamie, have you been able to add a bit back yet?
Yeah, I'm pretty varied, and also like from learning just kind of like when that bucket's full and like when I need to like lower the load and restrict a little bit with food versus like, okay, I feel pretty good right now and I'm going to eat half an avocado or something like that. Like I've been able to kind of tune in.
Yeah, it's like knowing where you are, right? Where you are and what you can do. And the same here as well.
Yeah.
So who will it help? Those who have histamine related symptoms, and mast cell is definitely, because the mast cells release histamine, one of many mediators. And I think we've shared in past Facebook Lives about how that feedback happens. Like you release more histamine, it upsets the mast cells release more histamine. It's kind of like a circular thing. So you can kind of get that histamine level down, and see if that works for you.
Yeah, so at the bottom, everyone, we have the link to our low histamine diet plan. There's a lot of discrepancies on when you just search low histamine diet online. Ours is very comprehensive. It removes foods that are histamine liberating as well. And so it's a pretty comprehensive, well-researched list. So you can find our low histamine diet plan. And we also have a printable version that you can grab on our website as well. So who it will help, the idea of whether or not it's people with MCAS or just histamine intolerance, I think it would be helpful if we talked a little bit about the difference between the two.
Yeah, so mast cell and histamine intolerance, they, like I think we've said before, they can be overlap, but they can be separate too. So as Jamie was saying, so some symptoms that are shared by both are like anxiety and depression, some asthma and shortness of breath, fatigue. These are general things. Gut issue like diarrhea or constipation, headaches, inflammation and swelling, insomnia, sinus issues like congestion, runny nose, like Jamie was talking about, skin issues like hives, rashes, flushing. That was me. And there can be other things too, but kind of like if you can tie it to the diet, kind of like get curious about that. And like, was that a high histamine thing I ate? Or, starting to do the low histamine diet and giving it time, right? So giving it 6 to 8 weeks minimum, right, to try, but there might be other layers too.
Yeah. And then here's, if you could go over kind of how you can tell apart.
Yeah. So how to tell them apart. So histamine intolerance, response time usually needs at least 30 minutes or more. Right, because it's part of the digestive. Can also build up slowly, can cause symptoms days or hours later. We usually say up to like three days later or so. Symptoms with too many high histamine foods. So if you can tie it to something you ate that was higher histamine, that might tell you this histamine intolerance on board. with mast cell reactions are almost immediate usually. As soon as you smell something happens, or as soon as you, for me, when I would have a mast cell reaction, literally put my foot in a cold pool, take it out 10 minutes later, hives covered over it. That's like a mast cell reaction. And symptoms in 2 or more systems of the body. So that's more a systemic kind of thing.
Yeah. And I like to remind people, like with mast cell, it really varies person to person what those symptoms are and what systems in their body are like reacting. Because like for me, it's mostly like neurological and gut. Like I don't have a ton of skin issues, whereas like some people have the anaphylaxis and hives. And so it's very individualized as well.
Yeah, it is very individual. Yeah, and I'm more skin. And I was neuro, but I feel like the neuro stuff has gone away.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay, so low histamine diet didn't work. Why? So a few reasons why it might not have helped much. So realize that some of the lists out there are wrong. I'll see sometimes a list and it'll say something I'm like, oh, that's a little on the higher histamine side. Histamine is very much about amounts too, and each of us can tolerate a certain amount, and for some of us it's like 0, and for some of us it's you reach a certain level. But research didn't account for the other reactions or intolerances. Many of the lists copy other lists and errors happen, and some of the lists don't include histamine liberating foods or those that decrease your DAO, which DAO is what you use to break down histamine. So the other things could be you might need a little bit more time on it if it was a short term. It could be that you don't have histamine intolerance, and there might be another reason why you have a lot of histamine. And histamine isn't your only issue, and it usually isn't. So it might be just one of the layers.
Yeah. So, like Kimberly just said, it's like one of the layers. So often, we find that a low histamine diet, if it's mast cell activation syndrome, is not often like enough for stabilization of the mast cells. So we use a really layered approach to kind of like how we help our clients in clinic. You want to speak a little bit more to kind of what are some of the things that they can do next?
Yeah. So what are some things that you can do? So if you tried a different kind of low histamine list, try ours, print it out. It is free. Take a look at it. Maybe there's a few things that you missed. Look at your diet, adjust, maybe a little bit of tracking short term, maybe 6 to 8 weeks. Am I really truly low histamine? Am I doing all the things? Am I doing the leftover piece, which many people miss?
Meat handling.
Or the ground meats, right? The things like that. Because I will have people come into clinic and they're like, I'm eating I avoid histamines. And then I look at their diet list and it's like ground meats or leftovers
or defrosting it.
Or other things they just missed.
Yeah. Defrosting it overnight. Like I feel like cooking, that was a big one for us, is using our Instant Pot to cook meat like from frozen. It was really helpful for that initial period for me to really lower the histamine.
Yeah. A lot of people cook for frozen. So swapping is better than eliminating, because we don't want people to eliminate too much, but there are a lot you can eat if you're just on low histamine. And if you're struggling and you need kind of to take a look at that in detail, you can work with a practitioner. Give yourself a little bit more time. Layer in with other supports. So, some things like the DAO, right, which is going to help you break down excess histamine. So it's not only that the diet might have been high, you might also not be breaking down the little bit of histamine. And histamine, a little bit, is created anyways when you digest. And it's not necessarily the enemy. And explore other food intolerances. So what are those other food intolerances we commonly see is oxalates and salicylates. And our low histamine diet assumes you're gluten-free, dairy-free if you need to, if you're someone who reacts to it.
Yeah. So as Kimberly was saying, we kind of layer in those other supports and working with a practitioner. One of the first pieces that we explore is that nervous system piece. It's where we start all clients. It's a huge part of healing. We've done so many other lives on that topic, so we're not really going to go into that today. But if you're kind of not sure what to do, we can certainly help you with that if you're interested. But even just our course, the Nervous System Reboot, is a great place to start. And you can find that at masscell360.com/masscell.reboot. And I'll have Cam put that into the comments for you guys as well.
And so, yeah, I mean, like, it's multiple layers, and that's why we're called MassCell 360, right? Too, it's like 360 view of all the things. It's not just the low histamine diet or just getting out of mold. It's looking at you very holistically in terms of, like she's saying, the nervous system work, the mast cell supports to help calm things down, any kind of foundational supports like sleep and movement and basic things we need, removing the environmental triggers, and then exploring other food intolerances is huge.
Yeah, I just want to throw up, there's the link for the Mast Cell Reboot if you're interested in that course. And yeah, Kimberly, do you want to go over some of those nervous system?
Yeah, so some areas you may need support in with nervous system. We break it down into 3 areas. So there's the limbic piece, which is kind of top down, like from your brain down, like fear-based, can be subconscious kinds of stuff, of things where your body is tied to things. There's the vagal piece, and then there is the structural piece, which can affect the vagus nerve because the vagus nerve runs through your cranial sacral part of your neck. So you want to be making sure you're looking at all 3 of those, and we do look at that. And the Nervous System Reboot does a really great job explaining all 3 and why they're important. Because you don't want to just be doing limbic and not the vagal. The vagal will get louder. If you're just doing vagal and not doing limbic, the limbic will get louder. So you want to make sure you're addressing it all. Let's see. Many people want to skip that piece. Yeah, because we haven't and don't want to address all 3 areas. It is important to do it. I will tell you myself, I did do the nervous system work, but I couldn't tell a big difference in the beginning because that wasn't the loud part for me. But after I got the environmental mold piece, and my immune system kind of quieted down, the nervous system piece was there waiting for me to do a little bit deeper dive. So it is there. And it is at least 50% of mast cell activation. So know that. For some people, it's 90%. For others, it's more like 50%. So just
I'd say like the majority, when someone comes in for their roadmap appointment as a new client, like that's the majority of what we talk about in that first like appointment to onboard you, to kind of see like what supports do you have, where can we change things, do we have all 3 layers covered. So Kimberly, I'd love if you can share, and everyone in the audience, if you are doing nervous system support, we'd love to hear what you're doing. And maybe it's something that we currently recommend. Maybe it's something new. This is kind of how we can also learn about, are there other things out there? We have some of our favorites like Primal Trust Academy, New Calm, the exercises in our reboot, right? What do you like, Kimberly?
Yeah. So, in my journey, I mean, I started with Gupta because I don't even think Primal Trust existed at that time, or at least we didn't know about it. And then Primal Trust is a very comprehensive program, so that is a good place to start, especially if you have done maybe a limp like DNRS or Gupta, and you haven't done like a Primal Trust. Primal Trust does a lot on the vagal piece. They do touch on limbic as well. They do touch on vagal, and they do touch on the structural, and they touch on the somatic piece and the trauma piece. So that is my favorite go-to overall for a comprehensive program. But there can be like really specific things. And for myself, I know internally a lot of us use an app called New Calm. I sleep with it every night, and the deep sleep program is playing in my room. It works on sound-based healing for the vagal system. I used New Calm today. I just realized like things had kind of got, I was like rushing around. I'm rushing around too much. I'm trying to get a few things done. And I'm like, okay, I need to just slow. That's when I noticed I need to slow down, put my New Calm on, and just kind of chill out a little bit. So that is a tool that I use a lot. I also, people will be like, well, what's your nervous system routine? And it's like, I had one that I used to do like 30 minutes twice a day. I don't do that specifically anymore. It's more I weaved it throughout my day. But I do recommend when people start that they have a regular nervous system routine.
Yeah.
Something that you do every day at a time that works for you. Some tie it to like, I'll do it every morning at this time, or every day after lunch or before lunch. This is what I do. It's coming up with your routine and starting with the tools that you know,
Mm-hmm.
and then just learning and trying other tools and layering it on. That's kind of what I would do when you're starting out with this. Just getting a daily practice. And I'll tell you, every time somebody comes in and they're like, I've gotten away from my nervous system practice, it's showing up in their symptoms.
Mm-hmm. I notice it on
it's not the only thing, but it up levels. Yeah.
Yeah, like before when my son was like sleeping in our room, every morning waking up felt so chaotic because I would like open my eye and it's like he sensed that I was awake, and it was like my day had to start like that. And now that he's in his own room, I have that space to do it. And actually, like, without him in my room immediately, I can wake up and like actually not feel the need to immediately do breath work, but like I can get my snuggle in with him. And it's way more welcoming to have like that space and time to create like a conscious morning. I think is like when you start living consciously is kind of like where you can see and be more aware of like the nervous system pieces and how they show up for you and don't show up for you. Like I right now love doing breath work. But I've also done primal trust. And like, so it's like Kimberly said, it's like starting with what you know and love and then adding on or trying new things. I tell people it's like, try this on, right? And so we have a free, in addition to our reboot, which is a paid course, we do have a free live that I did back in November. Maybe Cam can drop it in, or you guys can go search our archives of past lives, but we did, I think I did like 5 or 6. That like if you don't currently have any nervous system support on board, like go and pick one of those and just do one like every morning or every day after lunch. Like again, like Kimberly said, like pick that time and just do one thing.
Yeah, pick the time that works for you. I love the idea of habit stacking, where a habit you already have could be brushing your teeth. You kind of like every time I brush my teeth, I'm gonna right after do this because it's a habit we already have.
Yeah.
Do this nervous system support. I mean, and it could be tied with a meal time that you're always kind of eating. But how can you start that routine? Because it really is about the consistency more than the doing it perfectly or doing it the right ones or anything like that. It's more the consistency of doing it.
Yeah.
It's a practice.
And then Lynn is asking for you to type out the name of the nighttime thing you use. So it's Nucalm, Nucalm. And maybe Cam can drop that in for you, Lynn.
Yeah.
Right.
I should say with the Nucalm, if you're looking into Nucalm, pick the so you can try. Nucalm does have a free trial, just so people know. I think it's like, I don't know, 2 weeks or something like that. Don't quote me on that.
7 and it goes through all
7 days. Okay.
Yeah. So
7 days, which is great for it's a tool you can try. Do the calming ones. So you want all the sleep power pack or whatever it's called. You want the sleep ones because you don't want the ones that are stimulating, right? With mast cell, you're already stimulated. Things are upregulated. You want to kind of calm things down. So I just want to add that.
Yeah, good point.
Okay, so some mast cell support. So what are some things that you can add in that can help with the histamine and the mast cell, right? So one that we use in clinic a lot, that is something that everybody has usually in their cupboard, easy thing to go to, is baking soda. A little bit of baking soda, like say you can start with a little if you're someone who's super sensitive, but like a quarter teaspoon and 8 ounces of water can make a big difference. It calms the inflammasomes in the SIRT2 pathway. So it's very calming usually to the nervous system, but pay attention to you, right? DAO is another. That is the one that the enzyme that breaks down histamine. Perilla and quercetin are 2 other go-to that are herbals that can be some great mast cell supports. Yeah, and this is a good point here. Many people want to onboard things too quickly. Like, you're like, I feel miserable, so I want to onboard this whole protocol. I do everything at once. And with mast cell, you want to go low and slow. When I was making changes, I decided that once a week made sense, that every Sunday I'd be like, okay, what's the one thing I'm going to change up this week? For some people, they're able to do it like twice a week, every 3 to 4 days kind of thing. But just going slow and doing drops and sprinkles and slow is fast for sure. Because otherwise you just get more riled up and have more to come back from.
Yeah, and we have a whole master class on those mast cell supports. And earlier this month we did a whole live on that as well. So if you're interested in that, you can check out the previous live, and you can learn more about the course down here at mastcell360.com/master-class. I believe it's actually still on sale till the end of this week. So if you're interested in getting it, it's only $67 right now.
I see people asking about drinking baking soda. So yeah, it's a little bit of baking soda in water.
Yeah.
It can be calming. Pay attention to how it affects you though, right? And you're not going to want to take that right near your mealtime, because it's going to short-term lower that stomach acid if you're trying to digest proteins. So it's not like something you would drink with a meal. I'd probably recommend between meals doing that, but it can calm that inflammation response a little bit. And yeah, Lynn is saying it has almost immediately relieved the skin issues, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So what are some other foundational supports you want to be thinking about? Sleep is huge, and that's circadian rhythm and consistency on bedtime, getting to get to bed by midnight, because your body starts to really go into detox mode when we're sleeping. So that's a good rule to follow, is trying to be asleep by midnight, which I know can be challenging if you're up watching something or into something on social media. Movement is huge, and starting where you are, right? It doesn't mean go run off to the gym if you're reacting all over the place. It might be just a matter of more steps during the day in your house. It might be walking to the mailbox. It's where you are. Hydration and electrolytes are huge. Daily bowel movements, so important. That's how you're detoxing and getting toxins out, one of the primary ways. So everybody should be having a daily bowel movement. So know that's kind of what's strived for health-wise. I mean, it can be more than one a day, but you also want formed stools, and taking time for joy. I like to call it vitamin J. So the whole purpose of living, right, and making sure, sometimes people are like, well, I'm sick, how can I have fun? And it's like, how can you find fun or joy or beauty in your everyday is important. And yeah, some of these are the more boring things, but they're like basics that your body is looking for, and just that consistency.
Yeah.
And removing environmental triggers, if what they are for you, right? So yeah, this is a very broad area. For some people, cleaning and personal care products. So taking a look at what are you using to clean your house or on your skin, and do they have a lot of chemicals in them or things that are triggering you? I like to start with the things that I use the most, because that's where you're getting the most exposure. So that's where you kind of make the changes. You don't have to change everything at once and just be like, hey, every month I want to change a product I use, or as I'm finishing up a product, see if I can find one that's a little bit better for me. EMFs, so simple thing that you can do to see if your EMFs might be disturbing your sleep, which they can, is turning off your Wi-Fi router and your cell phone at night. So the Wi-Fi one is easy because you could put that on like one of those like timers. So it just automatically goes on and off, so you don't have to think about it. And just kind of try that out. It's a free way to sort of check to see if EMFs, because some people have disturbed sleep from the EMFs. Clean water. We prefer reverse osmosis, just because you're going to remove the most things from your water in terms of toxicity, like the PFAS and all the things that are in our tap water. Legal doesn't mean it's safe, so know that. And so the cleaner the water, because we're consuming a lot of water and you're using water to detox and calm down the system. And clean air. Clean air is huge, right? So testing for mold, using air filters. We sometimes don't think about our air because we don't see it. Opening the windows. Yeah, this is big. If you're in a new house, I'm in a new house, I notice how tight it is. It's important to think about, getting fresh air in, whether it's opening windows for a short period of time, if it's winter, or most of my fans filter, go to outside. So it's more when I leave the house, sometimes I will leave all the fans on, and when I come in, fresh air is coming in. So it's kind of like helps circulate the air a little bit. And what do we see? Yeah, mold is a huge mast cell trigger, and it's in they say 95% of their clients. I will say may even be higher than that. And all the clients I work, sometimes it's not obvious and it takes a little bit to find, but yeah, mold, and sometimes it's past mold exposure that's been with us too. So it's kind of like, is mold a problem, and is it a current problem? It's kind of what we're looking at when we first bring a client in. Because if you're in it now, it's hard to kind of calm everything down if it's that mast cell trigger.
Yeah. I think you've said it before, or I've read the statistic. It's like 3 seconds you can only live without air for 3 minutes, without water for 3 days, and clean food. So it's like,
water's like, food's like 3 weeks or something.
Yeah, if they're trying to prioritize like where to start, like what to focus on, like air definitely, like because you can't see it, it's not top of the mind. But then when you actually get an air filtration device or an air purifier and you see how much dust gets collected in that, it's one of those like, wow, you have that realization, like if I didn't have this would be in the air.
And in my lungs.
Yeah. I slept in my son's bedroom. We told him that we would get him his own, air purifier once he would start sleeping in his own room, because they're expensive and it's it is an investment in your health. And he had a nightmare the other day, and I had to sleep in the bed with him in his room, and without the air purifier in there, I was like, oh my God, he needs it. So immediately I went on Amazon and was like, I'm giving him an air purifier.
Yeah, it can make a big difference.
It's crazy. Okay.
Somebody's asking about reverse osmosis and what is the best.
Let me see. Here we go.
So AquaTrue, I like AquaTrue. And the reason being is that you can do it even if you can't install something. So yeah, reverse osmosis is usually installed under the sink, but AquaTrue has 2 other options. They have a carafe option and they have a countertop. And I'll tell you, for years I used that countertop one.
Mm-hmm. I currently use the countertop.
So there's options for everybody there. Mm-hmm. Different price points too.
Okay. Right. So the last piece of this stabilization piece, once you've done clean air, once you've done clean water, once you've gotten daily bowel movements, or if you haven't gotten that daily bowel movement yet, you still have to kind of dig a little bit deeper, right? And so we mentioned this earlier, and this is kind of to get us a little bit deeper into it. It's like, what are you looking for to continue to remove those triggers, and then one of them being maybe some of those other food intolerances. So Kimberly, if you would just want to say a little bit.
So if we've done sort of all that, and sometimes when people come in, it's kind of obvious. I did see somebody commenting about they react to electrolytes. So that might be a clue, possibly. There could be multiple reasons why we react to electrolytes. And one reason could be oxalates, because oxalates use those to detox. I mean, it could also be sometimes our nervous system, it's a new product. It could be it's too much of one thing and not another thing that our body needs. But oxalates, some other things to look at, lectins, FODMAPs, especially if you have SIBO. I know I had to do low FODMAPs, low oxalates, and low histamine for a couple years while I was healing. And I don't really think about FODMAPs or oxalates at all. Histamine, I just keep in mind in terms of the highest histamine things if I have a reaction, some kind of reaction. And salicylates, huge. And people can have other food allergies for sure, and intolerances, and kind of getting to know what those are.
Yeah, I think people really want to know, like, they want testing for all of this, and like testing gets really expensive, or testing can be like kind of inconclusive because sensitivities can change. And if you haven't eaten something for a while, it might not show up, but it could be something that you react to if you did start eating it again. And so I like to tell people, like, this one's really highly individual, and you really do have to like pay attention to, what's going on in your body. How is your body reacting? To kind of find out those food sensitivity pieces. Because I know for me, realizing, like, for example, tomatoes, I thought it was nightshades because I was into the like AIP diet for a long time, and it's like they remove all nightshades. And so I thought, like, oh, I can't have tomatoes because of the nightshade, but I would get headaches sometimes and not every time. And so, like, when I learned about histamines, that's when I realized when I got the headache from a tomato is that my histamine bucket was overfilled, like flowing. And so it wasn't that I couldn't have nightshades. It was that I had histamine intolerance. So it is pretty highly individual. So just keeping that in mind, that some of those testing, like everyone wants testing, and like it's not always conclusive for them.
Yeah, especially on the food intolerances piece, and especially if we have leaky gut, and if like I think elimination is far better for mast cell people, since we have so many reactions, or you've already limited things, and we don't want people to eliminate more than you need to eliminate too, because sometimes we get into the fear of, oh, I'm reacting to something, so I keep limiting my food when it could be the air that's affecting you.
Right. Yeah.
And you want to keep that nutritional piece is important for detox.
Yeah, especially when we remove those foods, we remove the nutrients, and so many processes on the body rely on nutrients and vitamins, and
including detox. Right?
Including detox. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, I think that might be the rest of our slides. So for those who have been following us for a while, or you're new today, I want to remind everyone that we've just made a big change to our clinic. We're now offering 2 tiers of support. So our foundational tier is new. This is our strategy sessions that we launched at the end of last year. So that was kind of like a beta program. They were really successful in helping people kind of get unstuck or give them guidance on where to get started. So that would be, if you're looking for a strategy session to meet with a health coach to kind of just get an idea of where do you go from here, that would be a foundational client. So when you go to mastcell360.com/application, there's only one application, but we have a set of pre-screening questions to kind of help you be directed to the application that makes the most sense for you. It starts with emotional support and SSP. So that is something that we're offering to both clients and non-clients. So if you're looking for emotional support, that would be the first question. You can just go that route. And then if you're not looking for just emotional support, you'll go into the rest of the questions there. We are now accepting international clients as well. So just keeping in mind that we can only work within the parameters of treating you as a client within the United States. So that means like we work on Eastern time zone. We cannot read labs in other languages. So just keeping those things in mind, sourcing supplements and things like that, we can discuss with you, but we do have some limitations there as well. So as far as international clients, it's great. You could start the strategy session. That can help us kind of really see if we're able to help you in an advanced track as well. Kimberly, do you have anything to add? And otherwise, we'll be able to answer some questions today.
No, just if you're stuck on your journey, I mean, worth to even just start with a strategy session or something to see, just to get some feedback on where you are and what you've done and where are you getting stuck, and is it something that we can support you on? But even just starting with a one-time strategy session makes sense that way, to see if it's a good fit. Yeah, and if we might be able to help.
Yeah, especially if like today's topic is like you've tried the low histamine diet, it didn't really work as you thought, like what next? And so all those foundational pieces that we discussed today, like looking at mast cell supports, looking at cleaning up your environmental triggers, those are all things that our health coaches are prepared to help you and support you with. Okay, so let's go through and find some questions. All right. Here's a great one. Tanya, I have found the low histamine diet to be helpful, but I have been slow to add foods back in. Do you have a suggestion on what to add back in first?
It's hard to say, right, specifically for her. Mm-hmm. So is she trying to add histamine back in? That's
yeah,
what
Tanya, great. Yeah, good follow-up question. So Tanya, as far as if you're still watching, like, are you on a limited diet? What we see a lot, I feel like, is people have gotten so limited, like maybe they're like only eating a few foods and they're not sure what to add in first. Like this, where maybe you've done low histamine diet and it's been helpful, you've seen a reduction in symptoms, and now like where do you focus on adding something back in? The low and slow approach, picking one food that you most enjoy, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's huge. The food that, what are you craving? But also, is it on the high histamine list? So maybe looking also, we have high histamine list. So maybe some people, like, they were low histamine and now maybe they could be more medium histamine.
Mhm.
But I wouldn't go jump to the high list. Like I wouldn't jump into a vinegar or a blue cheese. Like I'll never eat it again. Like it's
No,
mold.
no, never eat blue cheese.
Yeah, and I loved it. And it was delicious, but yeah, I don't even crave it now. So yeah, making sure we're not jumping into something that's super high histamine, like a ferment or a leftover or a thing like that. So maybe it's onboarding something that's a little bit lower, but a little bit challenging, right? So maybe a little avocado,
Yeah,
or a tiny little bit of tomato or something like that.
and one of our blog posts is, so it's not the histamine list blog post, but we actually have like the histamine diet blog post. If Cam can throw that in, that would be a great blog to revisit, because that kind of breaks it down into phases. So you might be able to use that blog post to determine, like, what phase are you in? Do you need to do low histamine longer? Or, are you kind of in phase 2 and can maybe introduce some things? Like, I think phase 1 is like removes eggs, and phase 2 you can add eggs back in, right? So kind of using your discernment to figure out where you are personally and kind of go from there.
Yeah, I think eggs would be great to get back, right? Unless you're allergic to them or super sensitive. Dairy would be great to get back if you tolerate it. Some people just don't, so you need to leave it out. And then when you add dairy, like for me, I would add like a little bit of goat cheese or a little bit of fresh mozzarella. I wasn't adding in aged Parmesan, right? Which is going to be anything aged, fermented, is going to be just higher histamine. So looking at if you're going to select cheese, select the lower to medium histamine cheeses versus like a high histamine cheese.
So Linda is asking, how do you know if you need DAO?
So people are like, and I did see a question, but somebody said about testing for DAO. The way I would test is by trying the DAO supplement.
Yeah.
And seeing how you do. And you may need to, take enough of it, depending on which DAO you're using. But we've seen people take, 4, 6, 8 pads to get at the dose that they need. But some people feel it at one capsule or one tablet.
Mm-hmm.
So, I would start low and see how you do. And if you're not noticing a difference, you can kind of go up. If you get to like a full dose of what that manufacturer is saying could be the full dose of that, it might not be that you're low in DAO. It might just be too much histamine. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay, so follow up on the DAO. Beverly's asking, why does DAO not work for some people?
Yeah, they might not have histamine intolerance. That might not be the problem. There might be other layers on top of that is not obvious yet.
Mm-hmm.
I know I didn't notice DAO at first. So yeah.
And so DAO is usually made from pork as well. So if you have a pork allergy or alpha gal, that may be why for some people it's just not the appropriate tool.
Great point.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So again, follow up. Lita, you've tried DAO but felt worse. Tried different brands. Any suggestions? So it might not be the right tool for you right now. So maybe some of the other supplements, the quercetin or the perilla, or even just trying the baking soda, like trying some other mast cell supports might be something that you could try instead, since we don't want people to feel worse, right? That's if someone tries something and there's any increase in symptoms at all, we always say stop and we kind of revisit. You have anything to add there, Kimberly?
I was just going to say, in DAO, most DAO is pork derived, but there is a beef kidney DAO as well for people who, and then there is a plant-based one. I will tell you, the plant-based one isn't as effective as the others, but sometimes it's the only one that some people can take.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, let's see. Karen is asking, any thoughts on the vagus nerve stimulators? They all seem to have EMF.
So in clinic, the one we like the best is Resimax, and that's because it's a lower one you can kind of turn down lower versus just pushing the vagus nerve. So that's paying attention. I think it's a lower EMF one, though if you're super sensitive might have an issue, but Resimax is the one we recommend in clinic at least.
Yeah, and I feel like
I have seen people use Alpha Stem and a few others, but yeah.
With the Resimax too, we've seen people like wrap it in a towel and like put it like 3 feet away from them to start and build up to it. EMF may not be everyone's concern, but obviously if EMF sensitivity is a huge trigger, then those vagus nerve stimulators might not be the best tool right now.
Yeah. The other thing I want to say is one of my really sensitive clients, it's also onboarding it slowly, right? So literally she started it with it off body, and then she had it in a towel, and then she was literally like for months, like 1 minute holding it, 2 minutes holding it, going that slow. She's extremely hypersensitive. So, but your body is allowing her to onboard more. So, don't just, if you're someone who's very, very sensitive to things, don't just go and do a half hour of it, or really onboard a lot of it. So going slow is going to be important.
Yeah, Linda, if you can't buy a product like NuCalm outright, there are so many free options. I would revisit the live we did back in November. We talk about resonant breathing, alternate nostril breathing, the basic exercise. So there's a book called The Healing Power of the Vagus Nerve by Stanley Rosenberg, and it has a bunch of exercises in there that can be very supportive to like the structural and vagal toning piece of the nervous system. EFT tapping is a great option for people. Acupressure. So there are definitely a lot of free tools out there where you don't need to buy like a monthly subscription to something.
My favorite free one for nervous system is just slowing down.
Half speed movement.
Just slowing down, like noticing when you're like almost getting into that rushing around, right? You're catching your pant loop on the doorknob. You're tripping and you're bumping into getting injuries, right? Because you're just like rushing around like a chicken with its head cut off, right? Just slowing down. That's free, right? Just kind of trying to slow down. Practice eating slower is huge too.
Oh yeah, like putting your fork down in between taking bites. Like often we're shoveling food in our mouth, and so like I tell my son, I'm like, can you chew that piece of meat until it's like applesauce texture? And sitting down and like counting your chews. Really slowing down. That's a great one. This isn't one that we recommend in clinic very often, Kimberly. I don't know if you have a personal opinion on it. For Loletta, she's wondering about red light therapy.
Yeah, so red light therapy is going to be, it can be, it's a tool, right? And so it's like using the right tool at the right time for the right person. So it's very more skin healing, more localized. So, but I don't see it in clinic very often because we're just not there yet. And it can, for some people, be a trigger because it's something new on your skin if your mast cells are revved up. I know for me, when I was covered in hives, that's the last thing I wanted was something outside doing that. So it depends on who you are and kind of know that. But I don't see it often used in the mast cell population.
Yeah. Zach is wondering, because Gupta mentions spending a week outside to see if mold is an issue. Have we tried this with any of our clients to see if it's a good way to gauge if mold may be playing a role?
So we don't tell them to go camp outside. People can be in different places, and if they're really sensitive, and some clients, like if it's mold like if it's pollen season, they'd be worse outside. So it's more like talking through, how did you feel when you visited this person's house? Or how did you feel when you took that vacation? Because I literally had a client who super, super sensitive when she was living in her house. Plus she was working in stress, right? And then she took a vacation, which of course was less stress, and she just noticed she could eat so much more and not react. So that kind of clued us in that, yeah, there's something going on in the house. Plus we have clients test their house,
Yeah.
just to be sure.
Yeah, so we do the ERMI test to like open our eyes to whether or not like mold may be in the house. But then, like Kimberly said, it's like a little house sabbatical, whether it's a vacation or you just go stay with somebody else to see if you feel better. And then we always get the question, and I think we have some past lives on this, but like, what can you do if you can't move, right? I will give you guys like a little teaser that mold month is coming up in March. So we're going to have a lot more mold content for you guys coming up soon as well. All right. Well, Kimberly, thank you so much for being here today. Do you have any closing remarks for our audience?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, try a low histamine diet if it's not something you haven't tried. Don't keep limiting your foods because it can be bigger than the food, right? It can be the environment or something like that. And the hardest thing is when I've seen people get down to so few foods that they don't have the nutrition that they need, and then onboarding the foods is hard because the nervous system is dysregulated. So hold on to your foods as much as you can, as long as, and try a low histamine diet and try not to get too limited. Work with somebody before you get too limited is what I would say.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll be back next week. Thanks everyone for spending some of your time with us today. We'll see you later.